No one's ever had the two types of cancers I have. The first one was Hodgkin's lymphoma, and the second one was Askins sarcoma, which is a branch of Ewing sarcoma with basically a 6% prognosis rate. But because no one's ever had these two cancers, I had literally a 0.000000001% chance of survival. So the doctors had no idea how to treat it. They had no idea if I was going to survive. They had no idea what was going on. I mean, I was read my last rites. I'm into the cloth, came in, rosary in one hand, Bible in the other, started reading me my last rites. You can't always control what happens to you, but you always have the choice in how you react to it. Yeah. And that's when I decided I wanted to choose what cancer meant to me and not have cancer impact me in a way that I didn't want it to be. I didn't want it to impact me. That's when I chose to see it as a good thing. Because at the North Pole, when the cameras were there, they panned over and they said, Sean, you just did something in history that no one's ever done before. How do you feel? And like everyone, I'm sure, in that situation, I said, I'm awesome. This is fantastic. I'm emotional. I hope I didn't let anybody down. This is amazing. When in all actuality, I felt hollow on the inside.
Hello and welcome to The Unknown Path, the podcast where you hear stories of the unique grit and determination behind the success you see from the outside, the unlikely synchronicities, the coincidences and connections, the untraveled roads forged one step at a time, the trials and tribulations, the hard knocks and the celebrations. This is an authentic sharing of human stories. Today on The Unknown Path, I am genuinely honoured to welcome a truly extraordinary human being, Sean Swarner. Sean is a two-time cancer survivor and the first person in history with only one functioning lung to summit Mount Everest. He has gone on to complete the 7 summits, ski to both the North and South Poles, and do what many would consider physically impossible, not as an act of bravado, but as a quiet declaration of what the human spirit is capable of. I think, Sean, you've also run 7 marathons on 7 continents in 7 days or something crazy like that. But what moves me most about Sean isn't the scale of his achievements, it's the depth of his perspective. His life invites us to question the stories we tell ourselves about limitation, resilience, and what it truly means to be alive. Sean doesn't just speak about overcoming adversity, he embodies a way of meeting life with courage, humility, and gratitude, even in the face of uncertainty. This conversation is not just about mountains climbed or poles reached. It's about the inner terrain we all must navigate when life asks more of us than we think we have to give. Sean, welcome to The Unknown Path.
Yeah, that was an amazing intro, and I was thinking to myself, I want to meet this guy. He sounds pretty cool.
Well, I'm going to say thank you to Lumi. Lumi is my AI assistant. And Lumi's getting very, very good at writing things the way I would write them, so I don't have to do much tweaking anymore. But so thank you to Lumi, dude. I'm really looking forward to exploring the story that led to all of this. It's really quite remarkable. I'm sure you've told it 1,000 times, but also I understand from just meeting you that one time when you and I got to have a chat and get to know each other a little bit. What I'm really moved by also is the current work that you do with Kilimanjaro, which I'll have you talk about in just a sec, and what drives you beyond all of the feats that you've accomplished. It's the work that you're driven to do today. So maybe before we start looking into the stories and the journey that got you here, would you mind just sharing with the listeners, we're here in January 2026. This probably won't get released until later in the year, but I'm pretty sure you'll still be engaged with your meaning and your passion and your work that you do. Could you just share with us what that is, what that looks like?
Oh, wow. My meaning and passion and work is, let me answer it by this. If you knew that you only had 14 days to live, you would tend to see life a little bit differently. And that was my reality. We'll get to that. At 16 years old, I was given 14 days to live. So my meaning and passion in life now is waking up every day with purpose, giving back as much as I can.
Mm.
There was a moment in my life where for a year and a half, I was terrified to close my eyes because I didn't know if they were going to open the next day.
Mm.
And that became my MO. And I thought that life at the time was supposed to be a struggle. And I thought that my life was a struggle because I was fighting and trying to claw my way up and climb the proverbial mountains in life. But now it's giving back as much as I can and creating more than I'm consuming. And I want to help other people see through my adventures around the world that, well, first of all, cancer can be a good thing, with the right perspective, but so can anything that we've ever been through. It can be a good thing because we have all survived 100% of life's most difficult challenges. And that's a pretty freaking good record.
Yeah.
So every morning I wake up, my purpose, my life, and what I'm focused on is giving good, creating good, and making the world a better place.
Yeah. Wow. One of the ways that you do that is your Kilimanjaro trip. Can you just tell us a bit about that?
Well, absolutely. I love the Kilimanjaro trip. I light up every time I talk about it because I've been up the highest mountain in Africa now 27 times. And it's become a part of who I am because I was adopted into one of the local tribes called the Chugga tribe. The average success rate on the mountain is 48%, where my groups are at 99% success rate.
Wow.
Double the mountain's success rate. And I think it's because of a number of things, but I lead from behind. And I think a lot of leaders, when they get out there, they have these giant egos. Like, I need to forge the way. I need to forge the path. Follow me, yo ho, on and moving forward. I
Yeah.
don't know where yo ho came from, but that's what we say in the mountains, apparently.
Yep.
So we've been up,
Yeah.
and I lead from behind. But we're also the only group on the mountain singing and dancing and telling jokes and having a great time.
Yeah.
And the summit becomes a byproduct of having fun.
Yeah.
So it's no longer an expedition, it's an inspedition. So
I
it's
love
an inward journey through an outward adventure.
Yeah, I love that. And don't you sponsor cancer survivors to climb Kilimanjaro?
We do. We do. I'm glad you brought that up because every year we pay for a survivor's trip, all costs covered. And then it's the responsibility of that survivor to raise funds for next year's survivor, paying it
Yeah.
forward.
I love
It's great. Anyone can go. You don't have to raise funds. You just pay your way, go on a great trip, learn something about yourself, but you also have to leave something about yourself on the mountain that you don't take home with you.
Yeah, and just FYI, I think I mentioned this to you in a text the other day. It is on Talia and my bucket list to come with you, not to do it on our. I want to come on your trip, so it's on there, man. It'll be in the next few years. So that's beautiful, and I'm guessing. I mean, you can talk to this. I'm guessing that, when the survivor makes it to the top of Kilimanjaro, and they're feeling what they're feeling, and then you invite them into the next year raising money to pay it forward for the next person to go up. I'm only guessing that gives them this extra level of purpose to their life then when they're about contribution and paying it forwards.
Absolutely. So now, not only are they doing it for their journey, their expedition, their adventure, their experience, they're providing that for someone else. And I think that it's amazing when you see the survivor who's been up the mountain connect with the survivor who's going up the mountain, and they talk about their journey through cancer, the mountain itself. It's a beautiful sight to see. And this past trip, we had a guy who, his name was Greg. He was a survivor who went this past July, past year. And it just so happened that one of the survivors who was part of the Adventure Support Grant, is what we call him. He was the grant recipient. He was on the trip with his son.
Yeah.
So it was really cool to see one of the people who helped raise funds for the guy who was actually on the trip.
Yes.
And that interaction was unbelievable. We got to the top. Everybody was in tears. It was like waterworks up there. It was so emotional, but so beautiful at the same time.
Oh, wow. Yeah, man. I just got the tingles all the way down my back. Yeah, that's beautiful. That really is. All right. So, let's jump all the way back. So, okay. So just to give people a bit of an idea, because I want to go earlier than this. I want to go back to when you were younger and you had no idea about, the journey that you were going to be on. But before we do, just let's the elephant in the room. Am I right in remembering that you spent a year in a coma?
A year, basically a year in a medically induced coma.
Dude.
And the reason that happened, excuse me, was because no one's ever had the two types of cancers I have. The first one was Hodgkin's lymphoma, and the second one was Askins sarcoma, which is a branch of Ewing sarcoma with basically a 6% prognosis rate. But because no one's ever had these two cancers, I had literally a 0.000000001% chance of survival.
What? So you mean when you say people haven't had these two cancers, you mean had them together? Had the two
Together.
cancers
Correct.
together? Right. Got it. Yeah.
Correct.
Wow.
So, yeah, so the doctors had no idea how to treat it. They had no idea if I was going to survive. They had no idea what was going on. I mean, I was read my last rites. I mean, the cloth came in, rosary in one hand, Bible in the other, started reading me my last rites. And I looked at my parents, who 16.
16.
16. So I'm not supposed to be, I'm supposed to be focused on my future, not my funeral.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to ask about your parents in a sec, because as a parent, and I've got my boys are 21 and 19 now, but my stepkids are 18 and 16, and I can just immediately go right there as a parent, even that's a whole other traumatic experience. But for you, man, I'm curious about for you. So like basically you were told by everyone around you, 16 years old, everyone's telling you that you are going to die, basically.
They wanted to put me in hospice.
Wow. Do you remember what that was like? Do you have any memory of what that was like pre-coma?
Interesting. I do remember going in for the checkup for the first cancer. And in the process of 24 hours, they found a tumor on an x-ray the size of a golf ball. They did a needle biopsy where they took a needle, threaded it through my ribs, aspirated part of the tumor. They removed a lymph node, put a Hickman catheter in, which is like a permanent IV in my chest. They cracked open my ribs, removed the tumor, put a drainage tube in, and started chemotherapy in less than 1 day. I remember that. And I remember waking up to my mom, my dad, and my brother, and the doctor there with this accordion-shaped, this is so hard to describe, a clear tube about this big, about this high, that had like an accordion style plastic bag on the inside connected to a tube. And my goal was to inhale through the tube so the bottom of that accordion style respirator would go up. And the doctor marked with a Sharpie a line. He's like, when you reach this line, you can leave the hospital. And it normally takes, he's like, a minimum of 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I was out in 5 days.
Right.
I was like, I don't want to be here. And
Right.
I remember that very vividly. But going back to your initial question, because the treatments were so harsh, I was vomiting for 36 hours straight. I had, without getting too graphic, I mean, it was everywhere.
Yeah.
And the doctors didn't want me to remember how difficult and violent the treatments were.
Yeah. And how, I mean, I don't know exactly how old you are, but I can tell roughly how long ago was this? Because that matters, right? Treatments have changed a lot since you were 16.
A lot.
And when was that?
That was in 91, 92.
91, 92. So now there's the really part that I'm so curious about. So you go into a medically induced coma, not just for a week, for more than a year. You're in a medically induced coma. Sorry, go.
So the treatments, just to make it more clear, maybe for a cycle of treatment, I would go in Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, inpatient in the hospital.
Yeah.
Treatments, right? And then I'd be released to go back home to recover.
Yeah.
So my red blood cell count could go higher.
Yeah.
My body could recover.
Yeah.
And then I would go back in after my counts were high. I would go back in Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. That was one cycle.
Right.
And when I was in the hospital for those treatments, that's when it was just so harsh. They just kept giving me stuff to not remember.
Wow. Okay. So a year of coming in and out of consciousness.
Correct.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, I'm curious about disorientation or how you orientated your way through that experience. And I'm also curious when they gave you stuff so that you were out, so that you weren't aware, do you think that there was still that your consciousness was still on, or were you like a zero memory?
Absolutely, I think it was still on. And I know that for a fact because when I travel on expeditions, when I travel for keynote speaking, when I visit a place, I do my best to visit local hospitals and talk to the patients, the kids, the parents, the adults going through care, whatever. And it's so interesting when I'm in a hospital and I smell something almost as mundane and normal as saline solution,
Yeah.
and it'll trigger a memory
Yeah.
because the sense of smell is most closest linked to memory.
Yeah.
And I'll sit there and I'll just be flooded with this memory and this emotion. I'll look at my handler like I gotta go,
Yeah.
and then I'll go back to the hotel room and I'll just lose it.
Yeah. Right. Yep. Yep. Yeah. I'd be more surprised to hear if you said, "Oh, there's zero echo or remnants left over of any trauma from that." If you said, "No, no, no, I'm fully smoothed out and all the creases are gone from the trauma from that," I'd be like, "Really, really?
No.
That's insane." So it makes sense that there's still connections and echoes and triggers back to that experience because wow. Okay, so then you get to the end of this period of treatment of spending most of your life medically induced in a coma, and then you come out and it finishes. Talk me through how did it go from it being that and then coming out of it and it kind of moves to the next chapter? What happened there?
You know, it's actually very interesting because all I wanted to do when I was 17, 18 years old, I just wanted to be normal.
Yeah.
I was probably the only kid in high school who wanted to be in school. Like I was tired of the hospital. I want to go to class. I want to be there.
Yeah.
Just to be with my friends and just be normal. I was the only person who wanted to be normal when I wasn't at all.
Yeah.
So when I was released from the hospital and when I was in remission, the first thought that came to my mind after the doctor said, "Hey, Sean, you're in remission." You know, my family was happy. My friends were happy. There was a ticker tape parade. Everybody was celebrating. But me, my first thought was, now what?
Mm.
Because my whole teen years, I was terrified to close my eyes because I didn't know if I was going to wake up the next day.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden the doctor says, "Okay, go think about your future."
Yeah.
Like my future was literally that minute.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Not tomorrow, not a week from now, not a year from. It was literally, okay, what's happening right now, this moment, this minute? And you're telling me to go live my life?
Yeah.
So I had no idea what to do. And in the States, we have this thing called a Relay for Life. It's a fundraiser for a cancer charity. And they have these beautiful luminaries around the track, you know, little candles in paper bags. And the first lap around is reserved for the survivors. And I grew up in a small town of about 5,000 people. My mom volunteered for the charity, and she put this organization, this event together. And even though everybody in town knew that Sean had cancer, that first lap, I stayed in the middle of the field. I didn't walk the first lap.
Right.
I was embarrassed. I didn't want people to I didn't want to be defined by cancer. I wanted to live life on my terms.
Yeah. Yeah. Were you conscious of that at the time, or was that just the way you were? Or were you observing yourself and going, "Wow, I want it to be this"? Like, what was it like for you in terms of your awareness of self?
I think it was. It was definitely a conscious choice because I didn't want cancer to define who I was. And also when you're in your I would say some of the most impressionable lives or years of your life, you're going through teen years.
Yeah.
For most people, your hormones are kicking in. You're growing hair in unusual places on your body. So you're trying to figure out what's going on with your body.
Yeah.
I remember I had this image of I projected 3 months into the future, and I had this image of my family sitting at the dining table. You know, like I said, my younger brother, my dad, my mom,
Mm.
My mom was setting the table and there was this one empty seat. I didn't want to be the empty seat at my family's dinner table.
Yeah.
So when I created that reality in my mind, then I decided I wasn't just fighting for my life. I had a deeper purpose. And I was fighting for my parents' lives. I had a bigger purpose than myself to move forward.
Wow.
So when most people are in their teen years, they don't have this concept of self because they're more concerned about what others think of them than what they think of themselves.
Yeah.
I developed that understanding of who I was, and I'm not in a conscious sense because I still don't understand who I am. I don't think anyone really does.
Yeah.
But I understood that I was going to start doing things based on my personal core values, not what other people wanted for me, but what I wanted for myself.
Yeah. Wow. And so from this massive experience comes massive learnings, and that makes sense. And it's interesting, I mean, this podcast is called The Unknown Path, and I don't think I've spoken with anyone whose path could have been even less known than yours when you came out. That really moved me when you said you came out and the doctor said, right, you're in remission, think about the rest of your life. And for you, that was like, what does that even mean? So now you're like 18 years old, around about 18 or something like that.
Getting ready to go to, as you probably call it, university. We call it college, yeah.
College, and you've come into remission, and you've got one lung now. Is that right?
I have one functioning lung. I have both of them, but only one really.
Okay, one functioning lung. You've just come into remission. You're the 0.0000, all the zeros, 1% survival miracle that you're even here. And you're 18. Were you aware then, or is it only with the benefit of hindsight and retrospection that you look back and realize, geez, I've had some real grit, I've had some real determination to survive, and I love that it was motivated by what it might cause your parents to have to go through if you didn't. So you've got that extra motivation beyond self. Were you aware of being specifically determined and having grit back then, or is it only you look back now and go, actually, geez, I'm a pretty determined individual?
Interesting. I love that question. I love where it's going too, because at the time, I don't think I really understood it.
Mm.
And a perfect example would be I was giving a keynote talk, and the night before they brought in some people who were in the NHL Hall of Fame, so National Hockey League. They're hockey players, best of the best. And in front of the crowd, the last guy asked a question. He's like, "How do you build?" I think he said, "How do you build resilience?" And his answer was, "Oh, you have grit, you stiff upper lip, you power through it." And I started thinking about that, and I rewrote the ending of my keynote talk. So I'm up in front of a few thousand people, and I mentioned that story about how I don't think resilience has anything to do with grit or being tough. And I started thinking about everything I went through, kind of what you just mentioned. And with hindsight, yes, 2020, I think what I've learned to do, and anyone can learn to do this, is you're resilient. Resiliency is built through loyalty. Loyalty to your personal core values, loyalty to who you are on the inside and what you want for your life. And the more you follow your personal core values, the more loyal to those you are, the more resilient you are, and you can push through things because it matters more to you.
Wow. I love that, man. I just want to pause on that for a second. That's super cool. I've never heard it put like that before, and I love it. I've heard before that, courage, you don't have the courage first to do something. Courage is a result of doing something that's unsure and unknown, and where there's feeling the fear and doing it anyway. Courage doesn't kind of come gift wrapped at your door first before you then go and climb that mountain. You climb the mountain, and then afterwards you feel that your courage levels have gone up a little bit as a result. It's kind of like what you're saying with resilience. You don't kind of develop resilience. It's about being loyal to your values and how you choose to be and what you care about. And then you look back and go, wow, that helped me be resilient, more resilient. When did you first When did you first start to get the inkling, the idea that you wanted to climb mountains and ski to the poles of the planet and all of this cool stuff?
Wait, that didn't come until after college. It didn't come until a long time afterwards. We'll say 10 years,
Right.
because I didn't really know what I wanted,
Yeah.
and I didn't really understand what I wanted from life, because I had this baggage of not dealing with the cancer, and that was holding me back. I had gone through this trauma. I hadn't dealt with the trauma.
Right.
I studied to be a psychologist for cancer patients, and how can I help others if I don't fix myself first?
Right.
I would just end up unloading onto them. So while I was studying to get my master's and my doctorate, I took a sabbatical, and I'm still on. It's probably the longest sabbatical anyone's ever taken. The education, done with that part. But then I decided that I couldn't do it. And that's when I decided I had to focus on myself and heal myself first. And
Yeah.
I literally took a long, literal and proverbial look at myself in the mirror.
Yeah. Yeah. What did you see?
It's interesting. I saw, well, let me back up. Remember I was telling you about the young man who projected 3 months into the future and saw his parents sitting at the dining room table?
Yeah.
That actually happened right after I woke up in the morning, and I walked into my bathroom, and I looked at myself in the mirror, and I saw this 60, 70-pound overweight, balding ogre in my eyes. I didn't recognize who was looking back at me
Mm.
because of the treatments. And I also then went into the shower and I collapsed on my hands and knees. My hair fell out in 20 minutes, clogged the drain, water was rising up. And that's when I projected my death in the future.
Mm.
And when I looked in the mirror back then, when I was studying for my degrees, oftentimes, even now, I still see that young man,
Mm.
that 60-pound overweight ogre, who in my mind, at the time belonged under a bridge, who should live under the bridge somewhere hiding from the world.
Right.
But it doesn't happen very often now. But when I did see that, I broke down, because I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know who I was. I didn't understand how much of an impact that really had on my life. And anything traumatic impacts you, and it can change you.
Yeah.
But what remains is actually, like, if you take away comfort, which comfort was taken from me. If you take away certainty, that was taken away from me. If you take away health, that was taken away from me. What part of my identity did I have left?
Mm.
Choice.
Uh-huh.
So you can't always control what happens to you, but you always have the choice in how you react to it.
Yeah.
And that's when I decided I wanted to choose what cancer meant to me,
Uh-huh.
and not have cancer impact me in a way that I didn't want it to be. I didn't want it to impact me in. So that's when I chose to see it as a good thing.
Was it when you were on the floor of the shower in the bathtub with the hair falling out and the drain clogged and the water rising? Was that a moment when you had an epiphany or a light bulb? Was there an epiphany or a light bulb moment, or was it just a gradual kind of realizing that I've got choice and that's who I can be if everything else is taken away from me?
It was both, I think. The epiphany that happened in that moment was when I came back from imagining that dining room table. I decided in that moment that I didn't want to focus on not dying. I wanted to focus on living. And that simple perspective shift, I think, changed everything.
Yeah.
So that happened. But understanding that choice, that took a while, I think, and it just gradually developed over time.
Yeah.
But spending time in thought, spending time not on technology, not listening to other people. And even now, when I wake up in the morning, I have I set intentions when my eyes open, and I'm the one in charge before the world gets a vote.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Man, dude, my mind is pinging with so many questions. I'm curious about some different things. One of them, I'm just car parking for a sec. I'm going to come back to it. It's about your influences before being a teenager, and I'll come back to that. But another question I'm curious about, given what you went through as a teenager, and that you ended up, choosing to put yourself in the face of adversity and potential death, summiting Everest and the other peaks, skiing to the poles, that sort of thing. Do you think you became someone who found some comfort or some comfort in adversity, in being out on the edge of life because of that's what you were used to as a teenager?
I think so. And I'm going to ask you a question. Can you hear that bird?
No, I can't hear the bird. And if
No, okay, good. So my microphone's
lovely,
working.
no, I can't hear the bird. Yeah.
Oh, I'm in Puerto Rico, and there's this thing called the carao, which is I forget the name of it, but it sounds like it's just screaming, and then it's like the Terminator. It's
Yeah.
terrifying. It is so loud. I'm glad this microphone's blocking it out.
Yeah, no, can't hear it, man. And here where I am in Australia,
good.
we have massive flocks of cockatoos. They're called cockatoos, and they screech and they're loud and en masse when there's literally hundreds and hundreds of them flying over the farm that I live in. And there's times when I'm like, surely you can hear that. Surely that's ruining the podcast recording. And people are like, no, can't hear it. So thank you, Rode, for this microphone that is very localized.
Right.
No, I can't hear the bird, man. But I am still curious around.
Good.
Do you think you sought some sense of security in a weird way, or some sense of comfort by putting yourself out on the edge of life and death in those situations?
Absolutely. I think I've taught myself how to be comfortable in the uncomfortable.
Well, you had to when you were a
And
teenager because you spent years.
Exactly. So maybe in my mind, I think that's how life is supposed to be lived, but I'm comfortable in that. I enjoy pushing the envelope. I enjoy what most people look at and they think, oh, that's crazy. I enjoy that. I don't want to say I enjoy pain. I'm not a sadomasochist by any means. I don't like pain. I don't like that at all.
Yeah.
Pain pain often is not a choice. Suffering is.
Yeah.
And I've chosen not to suffer in my pain.
Yeah, I love that. So tell me about a moment when you're standing on a precipice, you're exposed. Maybe there's a weather condition that's changed or something unexpected has happened. You're on a peak, and it is if something goes wrong right now, if you slip, it's all over. What's that moment like for you experientially?
First of all, I've probably rehearsed that scenario in my mind 10 or 15 times before it even happened.
Right.
So let's say going up Everest, I know there are avalanches, I know there are ladders, I know there are giant crevasses, I know the altitude, I know I could slip at this, that, the other thing. I picture in my mind what could happen. I don't fixate or focus on it, but if that happens, what is my response going to be? Because in any situation, when things are going great, anyone can lead. Anyone can make great decisions. It's when you're in those situations where things are difficult, that's when those decisions really matter. Especially if it's life or death. So I have dealt with those things, and I've dealt with them in my mind, different scenarios, hundreds of times before it happens. So if it does happen, I know how to react. I don't freak out. And I stay calm, but I also focus on what I learned when I was that young boy on the shower floor, to not focus on the avoidance of something I don't want to happen, put my energy and attention on something I do want to happen.
Yeah.
So as opposed to, hey, don't fall off, stay the course, stand tall, don't trip, stand tall, walk strong. And you do that over and over and over again. Your mind is in energy and attention are focused on where you want to go, not the avoidance of what you don't.
Yeah. Wow, man. I mean, you're hearing because this lesson there's a lesson in what you just shared. This lesson, you can read it in books, and I even teach it in my workshops, etc., which is word is powerful. Focus on the towards language rather than the away language. So focus on what you do want, not what you don't want, because the brain doesn't hear the don't bit. And I use the example in workshops. If I said to you, whatever you do, don't think of a pink elephant, you're going to think of a pink elephant, right? So my point to sharing this is that in this kind of, educational, trivial way that I'm talking about it, but the same lesson, and you came to it through the deepest lived experience of life and death, and really being on the brink of it as a teenager, really being on the brink of it as a teenager, and viscerally embodying that lesson of, well, hang on a second, I better focus on what I do want, not what I'm trying to avoid, and I love that. And you've taken that into all of your adventures and everything. Right, Sean, I'm gonna, little tangent. The boy that you were, not by conscious choice, but just happened to be a young teenage boy who then went through all of that experience that you went through, and you just happened to be a boy who had whatever you had, the resources that you had to get through that the way you got through it, right? Someone else, a different teenager, would have gone through it very differently. What do you attribute that to? Are there particular people in your life in your early days, or do you attribute it to nature, as in your genetics, or nurture, the environment you were in? Who were your role models as a kid, even if you weren't aware of it? What do you attribute that to before the whole thing started?
If we want to go back to when I was 5, 6 years old, I was as much as you can be a competitive swimmer at 5 or 6 years old, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a struggle fest trying to do a 25 meter breaststroke.
Yeah.
And I would always remember, because I love breaststroke, and I would touch the wall, and either my mom or my dad would be at the other end to pull me out of the water. Like they're 45-pound young man yank me out of the water. And they would always ask me 2 questions. Did you do your best, and did you have fun? Not, hey, why didn't you beat Jim? Why didn't you beat Steve? Why didn't you, beat whatever?
Yeah.
They would always ask me those 2 questions. And then the next weekend, I was getting ready to swim the 25 meter breaststroke.
Yeah.
They would ask me, what was your time last week? Like, let's just say it was like 30.2.
Yeah.
Okay, what's your goal this week? 30.
Yep.
So they taught me in a very nice, healthy, supportive way that I never had to be the best, but I always had to be my best.
Yes.
And by being my best and being a little bit better this week than I was last week, or today better than I was yesterday, eventually I did become the best. I wasn't comparing myself to others. I was comparing myself to myself.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Thanks, Mum and Dad.
Yeah, right?
Good parenting 101. I'm grateful for that. It's so beautiful, those 2 questions, man. Did you do your best, and did you have fun?
Did you have fun?
No, I love that. That's so cool. Hey, if you could go back to that 5 or 6-year-old, if you could go back there, the current version of you, and just have some time alone with him, and share with him a story of the life that's in front of him, that's something that would amaze and delight him, something that would have him go, what? No way. What would you share with him?
Let's say it was a 5 or 6-year-old boy. I would go back and tell him, dude, you're gonna be at the North Pole sometime in your life. Not mention anything about Santa Claus, but say you're gonna make it to the North Pole.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. To a 5 or 6-year-old, you're right. They'd go, wow, I'm gonna go find Santa.
I'm going to the North Pole.
Yeah. Wow, that's cool, man. Tell me about it, because I know I've got to let you go soon, and I don't want to, man. I want to keep talking to you for hours. I might have to have you back on. I'm curious about so let's say the North Pole, because you just mentioned it. Talk us through what that entailed. How do you ski to the North Pole?
Oh God, very, very slowly at some points, and then very, very quickly at others.
Yeah.
And I'll explain that. So at some points when you're going up there, because the best way to describe it is, if you look at the world as a giant glass of water. The oceans are the water. Let's just pretend like the atmosphere is the glass, right? Holding everything together.
Yeah.
The water, the northern polar ice cap are like the ice cubes floating on the giant glass of water.
Yeah.
Antarctica it's a solid landmass. That's the bottom of the glass.
Ah, right. Okay. Yeah. So
So-
Antarctica is a solid landmass continent. North Pole is ice cubes
Correct.
floating. Right. I don't think I even knew that.
It literally is like a glass of water. So you have continents around the outside. Even Antarctica is the bottom.
Right.
And you may see some pictures of polar bears and penguins hanging out together. And when that never happens. Polar bears are at the North Pole. Penguins are at the South Pole. They never see each other except at the zoo. So anyhow, where was I? Oh, so fast and slow. With these ice cubes, because they're floating on water, currents are floating underneath the ocean.
Yep.
And there was one time where we skied, let's just say, I don't know, do you want it in kilometers or miles?
It doesn't matter, either or.
Okay. Let's say we skied 5 miles north, right? Going to the North Pole. What is that? 8 kilometers, say 8 kilometers.
Yep.
North. And while we were sitting there sleeping, the currents shifted direction.
Yeah.
And they pushed us backwards 3 or 4 miles. Right?
2 steps forward, 1 step back. Right.
Yes. And because of everything cracking and shifting, oftentimes the glaciers split open.
Wow.
And those are called open leads. Yeah. And it's super deep. When you go across these things, they could be this wide and you're skiing over them with essentially cross-country skis. When you ski over top, you look down, it's just thick and black like oil.
Right.
It doesn't even look like water.
Right.
So those you go over very quickly.
Yep.
And especially if the open leads are 3, 4, 5 meters wide, right?
Yeah.
You go across those very quickly, and it's very, very scary when you can feel and see the ocean as like a slushy material. So it broke open that night and it's trying to refreeze. Right. So you do that very quickly and carefully.
Yep.
And then there are others where, as you're going across, say it's a soccer pitch, a football pitch,
yep,
100 meters wide, and you're moving across very slowly, trying to displace your weight across those skis. And as you're walking over here, it's almost like a teeter-totter where you see a giant glacier lifting up because you're making it rock.
Wow. Oh, dude.
That you kind of creep across very slowly.
Did you do this with people who've done it before?
One guy had done it before. And
how big's the expedition team?
We started off with 6. One person actually got evacuated.
Okay. And was it documented? Were you sponsored? Was it a production, or was it just you guys doing a thing?
No, it was filmed. There was a film group, a film company up there, and it's on Amazon. You can watch it there, but I don't get any royalties for it, and sometimes they charge. Just go to YouTube. There's a free version on YouTube.
Okay, great.
It's true. Yeah, it's called True North, the Sean Swarner story. The footage is just beautiful.
Oh, dude, I'm gonna go watch it tonight. I'm also going to have links in the show notes. Obviously, all the links to all your stuff, it's going to be there, folks. You can go and find where you can watch this stuff. I'm fascinated by this, man. That's all sorts of exhilarating / scary / super dangerous. I mean, there's the unknown because it's all shifting and moving as you're going. You can't pre-prep the route and go, well, we're just going to go here. You really on an expedition. How do you know when you're at the North Pole? A dumb question, but how do you know when you're actually on the spot?
The funny thing is, now with technology, the only way I knew I was there was a little blip on a GPS handheld device.
Right.
There are no markers.
Yeah.
And that piece of ice at the North Pole looked just like the billions of it the 10 days before.
Yeah, right. So it's, it's a blip and you go, okay, well, apparently we're here.
Yeah.
Which was
exactly.
How would you compare North and South Pole, those two expeditions?
Oh, night and day. The North Pole was just frigidly cold, and I don't care what what system you use to measure, it was 80 below. So at 40 below, Celsius and Fahrenheit are the same.
Yeah.
And then they start separating again. But it was 80 below
Yeah.
Fahrenheit. So it was just terrifyingly cold and humid. And the biggest issue, aside from the polar bears chasing us as well, was with the ski poles, we had this like neoprene sleeve that we attached and affixed to the ski pole. So when we're moving, you have your hands inside this giant neoprene sheath.
Yep.
And your hands get warm.
Yeah.
Then you stop, and because the humidity is actually from your hand going on the inside of that neoprene sheath,
Yep.
you take your hands out, put your poles up, and you go sit on your sled that you're pulling behind you.
Yeah.
And up in the front is where you have your food. You open that up and eat your food. And the food consists, nuts don't freeze. Like you can just chomp on those.
Okay.
But chocolate freezes, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to chip your teeth. So I would take a piece of chocolate, shove it over on one side of my mouth, and let that thaw out melt while I was eating nuts and sausage and cheese on the other side of my mouth. And then I would have the dessert when I was done eating everything else over here.
Oh, I love it.
So
Yeah.
so it was
Oh, it was the night and day difference between North and South Pole.
yeah.
Just so
Yeah,
cold.
so then we would go to, after we were done eating, we would put our hands back in those neoprene sheaths. And because the humidity that was there, now we're putting our hands in an ice box
Oh, yeah.
because that humidity froze on the inside. So for the next 45 minutes, you're trying to warm your hands up again. And by the time they warm up, that humidity gets on the outside, your hands and your fingers start to get feeling back again. It's time to stop for the next break.
Oh, wow.
Repeat. At
Yeah.
the South Pole, it was very, very, very dry. The sun was up at such a much higher angle. And at both places, they just kind of do a big halo in the sky. They never set, at least at that time of year.
Yep.
And at the South Pole, it was on one side of the tent, it was terrifyingly hot. I slept in my underwear. And on the other side, when the sun starts moving around, I started putting on clothes, putting up my 40 below sleeping bag.
Right.
Within a 2-meter stretch, it was probably the difference between, let's see if I can do this in Celsius, -10 in the shade, and 15,
Yep.
20 in the sun.
Yep. Just that difference between the side of the tent and the shade. Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
So, man, because of time, and I don't want to let you go, but I'm going to let you go. I'm fine. But I've just a few more things before we start to come to some of the more macro takeaways that you've had through the experience that's been your life so far. And I mean, round figures, let's say you're only halfway through. Did you develop any sort of addiction to the adrenaline or the adventure? Did it become something that you had to keep going and pushing the envelope on? And if you did, have you moved through that? Have you chilled out a little bit in your middle age?
Yes. And it hit me when that's a great segue, because at the North Pole, when the cameras were there, they panned over and they said, Sean, you just did something in history that no one's ever done before. How do you feel? And like everyone, I'm sure, in that situation, I said, I'm awesome. This is fantastic. I'm emotional. I hope I didn't let anybody down. This is amazing. When in all actuality, I felt hollow on the inside. And I went home. I was depressed for about a month because I realized that I had been chasing what I dubbed false summits. And I'm sure everybody's experienced one before, where they get to the top of their mountain, they look around and they think to themselves, this is it? Or worse yet, now what?
Yeah.
But then I realized, after doing some insight, and in retrospect, I did have purpose, and I changed my mindset. And then when I ran the 777, the 7 marathons, 7 continents, I don't want to say I didn't want it to be done. I was glad it was over, but I found purpose in each one of those marathons. And now when I do things, I'm more conscious and aware of enjoying the process as opposed to just reaching the goal. I want to continue searching for those true summits, and I don't want to be distracted by the false summits.
What's a true summit?
Happiness, joy,
Uh-huh.
freedom,
States of being.
things like that. Yeah, exactly.
And how do you, what are some ways that you can find those true summits, those states of being without having to go and ski to the North Pole?
Glad you asked, because I'll have to send you a copy of my new book. It walks through steps to make that happen, because on each one of the 7 summits, and at the South Pole and the North Pole, I found ways to do this. So in Antarctica, for example, it was the first time the clouds came in, and the clouds, because the clouds are the same color as the snow, the glaciers, up was down, left was right, right was, it felt like I was climbing in a ping pong ball.
Yeah.
Vertigo set in. And it was the first time in my whole life that I was, well, not my whole life, in the mountains, I was confused. I didn't know where to go.
Yeah.
But it was also the first time that I went inside while I was outside.
Uh-huh.
And I realized in that moment that when you're in some of the most disorienting situations, if you orient yourself first, you can make sense of that. And in those quiet moments is where you can hear your voice the loudest.
Yeah. When you are in those disorientating moments, if you orientate yourself first, then you'll know which way to go. Dude, you let me know. Do you have to bounce right now, or can I ask you one more question?
I do, unfortunately. My wife has a prescription waiting for her at Walgreens, and they close at 7:30.
Wow. Okay. All right. Well, just give us one last thing that you would love. I mean, I'm going to point the audience to all of your stuff, so you don't need to do that. But just give us one last thing that you would love to share. The first thing that comes to you from the experience that has been this, what was an unknown path for you, and now you look back and it's not unknown anymore, but the future is. What's one last thing you feel to share with our listeners?
I think one thing that we didn't discuss was, it kind of alluded to it when we were talking about being on the precipice and seeing things that might go wrong. But knowing the difference between, well, no, let me back up. It's how to relate to failure. And the first thing I do is, and I encourage everyone to do this, reframe it. Because a lot of people confuse failure with identity when it's actually information. Just because someone failed doesn't mean that you're a failure.
Uh-huh.
So there's no real thing as failure. But if I didn't reach my goal, then I must not have prepared properly. Maybe I didn't have the right nutrition. I assumed incorrectly. So I use that as a learning experience and understand that failure is not the opposite of success. It's actually part of a feedback loop that makes success repeatable.
Huh. Yeah, 2 beautiful things in there. One, don't be careful not to confuse failure with identity, as in I am a failure. That's beautiful. And then failure is a feedback loop to inform repeatable success.
Makes success. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's super cool, man. Sean, dude, it's been an absolute joy dropping into this conversation with you. I'm a bit of an amateur adventurist, and I love, at a much, much, much more chilled out scale than what you've put yourself through. I really love the outdoors and love adventuring, and so I'm very, very interested to hear more about your stories, which I'll do. I'm going to go and watch that YouTube movie of you going to the North Pole tonight. I'm looking forward to that. And in the meantime, all the best out there doing the wonderful work that you're doing for cancer, and the keynotes and the Kilimanjaro. Talia and I will join you on the mountain.
That'd be fantastic. Really appreciate the opportunity of being here. Thank you so much, Jim.
Yeah, you're welcome, Sean. To those of you who have listened to this episode, I'm sure you enjoyed it and got some absolute gold from it. Please tell your friends about this podcast. Let's see if we can get more people learning from these wonderful stories from the wonderful people that I'm lucky enough to hang out with. Until next time, we'll take care. We'll see you on the unknown path.